Hi everyone, welcome back to Disruptors. I'm really excited today to be joined by Amy Lamé, who is the first ever Night Czar of London. Welcome, Amy.
Hello, great to be with you.
Can you please tell us what the awesome title of a Night Czar is?
Yeah, it's one of those titles that catches a lot of people's attention. And I was so incredibly proud when Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, appointed me as the UK's first ever Night Czar in November 2016. And it was a really innovative move from Sadiq to create this position, because there are other cities across the globe that have similar positions. Amsterdam, Berlin, New York followed suit after London, and here in the UK, after I was appointed, then Manchester and Bristol also appointed similar roles. What sets London apart is that we have a 360-degree approach to our city at night. So almost exclusively every other person who's in a similar role to myself in another city around the world really just focuses on bars, pubs, and clubs, hospitality, that traditional nighttime economy that we all know and love and is incredibly important to our city, but isn't the whole picture by any stretch of the imagination. And of course, we need connectivity, we need safety, we need sustainability, we need culture, we need everything to work alongside and with that traditional nighttime economy. So when I was appointed, Sadiq said to me, right, Amy, make it your own. And having come from an entrepreneurial background myself, that was exactly the kind of words I wanted to hear. Because, it's quite daunting going from, my previous careers in broadcasting and running club nights, being a promoter and a community activist to go into city government. And I wasn't entirely sure how that could work. But it's worked brilliantly well, actually, because I've brought this entrepreneurial spirit. And I think that is something that Sadiq recognized in me. And it's something that is a part of not just my life here in London and, the great opportunities that London offers to entrepreneurs, but also my family going back generations. People often say to me like, oh, does that mean you have to stay up late as Night Czar? And of course I do, but I love it because that's what I do. My natural body clock works much later than other people's, but that is in part due to the fact that my father set up his own 24-hour plumbing business when I was a kid. And he had previously always worked night shifts at a local it was like a car factory. And then he wound up setting up his own plumbing business. And so we knew if the phone rang at 3 a.m. and somebody was calling because their toilet was blocked or something was overflowing, my dad was like out the door. And he built it into an incredibly successful plumbing business. And now we employ pretty much every member of my family and lots and lots and lots of other people as well. And so it's that get up and go spirit that was instilled to me from my dad, my grandfather, similarly immigrant, and started his own business. So it's that special mindset. I think it's like a kind of it's an immigrant or migrant mindset coupled with an entrepreneurial mindset that has allowed me to see things in a different way as I approached this role, and to have the support of the mayor means the world to me. And he recognizes the importance of this area of policy, and that is why we take a holistic approach. I'm working across every policy area in City Hall, from policing and crime to the environment, from regeneration through to economic development, and everything in between, because London deserves to have a life at night that is just as well respected, resourced, and understood as our life during the day.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What would you say are the kind of key differences in how a nighttime economy works to a daytime one in a city like London?
Yeah, well, I think that it's interesting to approach this in two different ways. One is perception and one is reality. Because I think people perceive the night in a way that it's dark, it's dangerous. If you're working at night, somehow it's second best. We all have heard probably the phrase graveyard shift, that somehow you're not really doing a respectful or respectable job if you work at night. And we really need to change that. And in fact, we know, we've got the data, so we know the types of people that are working at night. And it might surprise you, because we were trying to change the conversation about this. One of the first things I really wanted to do as Night Czar. And we came across a lot of people's, perhaps outdated, but I understand why people were thinking how they did about the night. So we conducted the world's largest data study into any city at night in the world. It was done by the GLA's intelligence unit. And we found that in London, we have 1.6 million people regularly working at night in the city. That is a third of our workforce.
Wow.
And the top three areas of work might surprise you. So in at number 3 is that traditional night economy, bars, pubs, and clubs. That is not where most people are working, actually. Second in up the scale is professional services. So people that may be like yourself, Rachel, maybe teaching at night, or working in the City of London, servicing financial districts around the world, or even freelance, say, graphic designers, or whatever it might be. It's a professional service. In at number 1 is the NHS. And it is our hardworking people that are keeping us safe and well, that are the most numerous that are working at night. And some of them are also the most vulnerable people, often working for low pay, often from a Black or minority ethnic background, often female. And so we need to look at these, these situations very closely to see how we can improve work standards at night, which is exactly one of the things that we're trying to do. So when you say, how does the nighttime economy work differently to a daytime one? I also think perception-wise, from a consumer point of view, it's a kind of thing that helps make our city what it is and draws tourists from around the world. And it's the reason why people want to live and work in London. It's the heart of so many of our communities. It brings people together. It provides a stage for aspiring artists. It provides jobs from artists to promoters, bar staff, security, and the entire ecosystem around that. And so, it's really vital that part of our life in the capital, that this part of our life in the capital continues to be the heart of driving our social and our economic recovery from COVID the past 2 years. We know how badly those traditional nighttime economy places and spaces have suffered.
I'm interested in what you've said so far on kind of 2 levels. One, for you personally, coming in as somebody who has said, I had a bit of entrepreneurial spirit about me. I've been in that space and I wanted to bring that into this role. And then also for the entrepreneurs in London, what the city kind of offers them. So from a personal perspective of you coming in saying, Sadiq Khan gave me a chance to kind of, blank piece of paper, what do you want to do with this role? What was it that you really wanted to achieve being the first person to ever be appointed to this role? Yeah. Were there things that you were like, I've got a vision?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing, well, Sadiq said, oh, make it your own. And by the way, can you get fabric reopened? Which at the time was like, you know, like it was a real nightmare situation. I don't know if you remember back in 2016 when the nightclub had been shut down, and, you know, it was on the front page of all these newspapers, and it was, you know, it was really a very complicated situation. And then, so, you know, this idea of having, oh, I can do everything I want. But then, you know, like he's so quick, like seriously, he's like, doesn't give you a chance to take a breath. But, you know, I think he's got that entrepreneurial spirit as well. And I really appreciate that. And so I think they're taking it from two perspectives. Firstly, what does London offer entrepreneurs? Look, I will start from a personal perspective. I grew up in the United States, you can probably tell from my accent, and I felt as though I had to move to London to live what is typically sold as the American dream, because I felt like London is a city that offered me those endless possibilities to try things, to also fail. I mean, it's really important as an entrepreneur to fail, you know, and I started my own club night and theater company, and goodness knows we failed quite a lot, but we also had some major successes. And London is infinitely sort of forgiving in that way, you know? And so I felt as though it was the only place that I could come to truly be myself and to truly take those risks. And, you know, in terms of the wider opportunities, you know, if you've got a good idea, if you can spot something that's never been done before or a new way of doing something, our city has the opportunities for you to realize that. And not just the kind of the time and the space, but also the support. I mean, from City Hall, we've actually got a lot of support for entrepreneurs and for young businesses to help small and medium-sized enterprises survive and thrive. A lot of it's been about surviving the past 2 years. Forgive me for using that word, but you know, it's like, you know, a lot of companies are still, a lot of small businesses are still really, really suffering quite badly. So I think that it's this mix of kind of, you know, what are you bringing to London personally? What is your energy that you're bringing to London? And what is your idea? And as long as you've got an idea and you can spot something, I think it's infinite. I think there's no other city on earth really that has the capacity to be so welcoming to entrepreneurs and so forgiving of our mistakes, because it's only through mistakes that you get better.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the things that we like to offer to students at King's is, you know, it's a safe, supported environment. Make as many mistakes as you like whilst you know, it's, yeah, you know, we can help you kind of move through that and figure out what you learn as a result of that. Mistake, failure. I don't really like those words because really it's just learning, but it's
no, I know what you mean. And I think, you know, sometimes in the States it's like nobody wants to hear about the quote unquote mistakes. They only want the success story. And actually you don't learn that much from the success stories. I mean, it's interesting, you know, it's great. It's inspired. Those success stories can be inspiring, but I'm much more interested in all of the kind of missteps or the maybe quite unfortunate decisions people have had to take, and where it's led them, because that's where the innovation happens.
Would you say you've had any missteps in your role as Night Czar so far?
Oh my God, yes. And I'm not going to discuss them here because they'll be reprinted. but I mean, you know, it's, no, I mean, I joke. I think that inevitably, as being the first Night Czar, and to your previous question, like you only get one chance to be the first Night Czar of London. so I was very keen to come into the role and to kind of, have that direction and that vision. Look, my background is in running LGBTQ plus clubs and events, and in broadcasting. And I love music. I love grassroots live music venues. So that grassroots side of things was something that I was very keen to work on. And, I knew that in 2016, we had suffered a lot of losses in those venues. Like, we had lost a lot of our queer spaces and our grassroots live music venues. We didn't have the data. It was all anecdotal. And, if you're trying to create public policy, you need the data. We're very keen on data-led policy, that's then sort of put through the lens of lived experience. So I was arriving with a lot of lived experience, but none of the data. So we commissioned some data, we co-commissioned some data from UCL's Urban Lab, and they showed that actually in the previous 10 years, 2006 to 2016, London had lost 62% of its LGBT venues. That is massive. Now, of course, that was quite a shocking number, but it also enabled me to take that data and then to develop some solutions, which is what we did. And this is one of the things that I'm really proud of doing, helping set up the world's first culture at risk office, which has now been expanded. I mean, it's now culture and community spaces at risk. We're helping up to 1,000 venues every year with a specialist team that work with local authorities across licensing and planning, with developers, with community groups, to ensure that these spaces are not lost in the way that they were in the previous decade. So that's one thing that I'm really proud of. I mean, another thing that I was able to do was work with the Met Police to scrap Form 696. Now, it's a bit of a one that, for anyone who's interested in clubland, that Form 696 might ring some alarm bells, because it was a form that the police used, like a risk assessment form that the police used for promoters. And it was disproportionately affecting Black and minority ethnic artists and promoters. So it was seen as being incredibly racist, and had shut down a lot of venues. Now, again, this affects London's global reputation as a welcoming city where innovation and entrepreneurship is encouraged. These are individual promoters that are taking risks and bringing in, hot new artists from around the world.
Yeah.
Of course, we want them in London. We need them in London. We want them to come to London more than anywhere else in the world. And so, the mayor agreed with me. And so we worked with the police. We helped the police run some public consultations, and we were able to scrap Form 696, and then helped to create another innovation called the Safer Sounds Partnership, which, instead of this top-down, we're saying what you should do as entrepreneurs or young business people, that is actually bringing everyone around the table, local authorities, the police, and those promoters, to work together and to make sure that everybody's having safe events that are well run, that are popular, and that don't discriminate, and that's open to everyone.
That's really amazing.
Popular. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting in how you've kind of described those two examples, because to me, it really shows that in order to do your job well, and it's a very entrepreneurial job, you have to know the problems that exist in your community. You have to be in touch with the lived experience of the people that you are serving, so that you can identify the things that need changing, right? And that's the kind of first thing that we always say to students that come in with entrepreneurial ideas. They're like, I want to build this thing. I'm like, well, hold on a minute. What problem are you solving? Go back a step. Tell me about the problem and spend some time really understanding that, because otherwise you might create a solution that doesn't match or solve the problem at its root. So how do you go about, as Night Czar, making sure that you have access to the voices that you need to hear in order to be in touch with the problem areas that you can then help to resolve?
Well, it's such a good question, Rachel, because, you know, sometimes people get into government and, you know, they just sit in a dusty office all day and aren't really, you know, hearing from the people they need to listen to solve those problems. And you're exactly right in that approach. It's like, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? What are the people that have that problem? What do they need? And have you listened to them? So I do this in a number of different ways. Firstly, through a thing called night surgeries. So we've just in person after 2 years of not being able to do them. So I'm really happy to be out and about again. And these are events at night that are done in conjunction with a local council, maybe a local business improvement district, local community groups, and local business people. And it's going out and about, meeting people, walking, looking at street lighting, looking at public realm design, hanging out at bus stops, me like barging into people's conversations and kind of asking them, like, you know, just, I don't know, I guess just like trouble spotting, trying to work out like what is working well, what isn't working so well, and how can we fix it? And it's that on the ground approach that I really value and that I need to take to ensure that I'm doing my job well. And that stuff combined with the data is very rich, So that's one way. I mean, we also hold loads of regular roundtables with various community groups. So we've just started one around inclusion and disability. So we're going to be meeting quarterly with them. We had a brilliant discussion just last week around ensuring what we do is fully inclusive. You know, we can all do better on that. You know, I mean, we're doing well at City Hall, but we really need to do better. And yeah, so and I also have those types of regular roundtables with industry, and I encourage people to be honest with me. Like, I don't want the rosy picture, you know. I really want to know people's problems and see how we can help solve. Sometimes it's not possible, but if we can, we do all we can.
Yeah. One of the biggest problems we are facing globally is around climate change and sustainability. And I know you've been doing some work in this space, particularly around London. And I'm interested in your thoughts on it, around how what's the connection between a nighttime economy and sustainability? Like, what does that mean? And where is London going as a city in terms of its sustainability agenda? Are we becoming more sustainable, or is that where we're heading, do you think?
I think we are, and I think the mayor is really helping to drive this change. As chair of the C40, you know, network of almost 100 of the world's largest cities, Sadiq is inspiring far-reaching environmental action. The C40 have already announced an expansion of their global Green New Deal program, millions of pounds of additional investment for green jobs and skills and infrastructure. They've committed to things like rolling out air quality monitors of dozens of cities around the world through the Breathe Global initiative. And, you know, these are actually based on the success of a similar program here in London. Right. And the C40 have also agreed to embed the principle of climate justice at the heart of their approach. And Sadiq has also unveiled this flagship green bonds program, raising £500 million to invest in zero carbon projects. And so he's also kind of reduced the amount of time we have to go net zero by a decade, which has made everybody start working furiously, much faster on this, which is a good challenge for us, you know, and it's a really ambitious target for London, but it's hugely inspiring that our mayor in London has taken this step. So, you know, we've all got a role to play in this, that is clear. And I'm proud that through my role, we've just started one of these sustainability consultation roundtables. So this is something that we need to get our skates on about. What we also need to make sure is that anything that is done is 24 hours. And so that we're not just thinking about, okay, well, the buses that work, you know, the net zero buses that are working around London during the day, we swap back to the old version at night. I mean, that isn't happening, thank goodness. But what I'm saying is that would be an issue, you know, if somehow at nighttime is seen as not as important. But I know how important the mayor sees nighttime, and that this is an integrated approach. So yeah, I hope that goes some way to answering your question.
Yeah. What do you think are the biggest, especially from a nighttime perspective, the industries or the areas where we still have a really long way to go in terms of sustainability? I mean, you mentioned hospitality as one of was in the top 3 of kind of jobs that people are doing at nighttime. Are there things that we can be doing as a kind of city to respond with a sustainability lens for that as an industry, knowing that it's part of one of the biggest parts of our nighttime economy?
Yeah,
I'm assuming that it's one of the ones that creates the biggest kind of carbon footprint in a way. And then I guess transport as well, I would imagine.
All of those issues and more. And I think that the hospitality industry, you know, has faced so many challenges in the last 2 years, and they're just getting their head around all of the changes that have taken place in the last 2 years. What we need to make sure is that they have all the support that they need for a green recovery, because we do not want this recovery, this social and economic recovery from COVID to be anything less than a green recovery. And so there is work that needs to be done. I absolutely recognize that. And we're just looking at that now, and at different projects that we might be able to take forward.
Yeah. The other area I'm interested in was, you mentioned it earlier when we were talking about people working in the NHS, but safety at night, because it's one of the biggest perceptions around nighttime in a city. And I wondered your kind of thoughts on that generally, and you mentioned a kind of gender divide potentially in that problem. How would you describe London as a safe city at night?
Yeah. First, just going back one step to the green bit, just a call out to any of your entrepreneurs that are listening. You know, we need ideas on how to solve this issue. So over to you. Now,
we've got plenty of those. We can put them in touch.
Yeah, particularly around nighttime economy, I'd be really, really interested to hear their ideas. So anyway, on to safety. And this is, I'm glad you brought this up. It's a really, really important issue. And so, look, I know only too well the challenges faced by women in our city. I'm a woman who has always worked at night my entire working life. And, you know, too often women have felt frightened. We're the ones that have adapted our behavior in order to make ourselves feel safe, when in actuality, it should be men that are changing their behavior. It's one of the reasons why the mayor and I launched the Women's Night Safety Charter back in 2018, to have a simple, doable, actionable plan for businesses and organizations and local authorities in London to improve women's safety at night. and also to improve the perception, women's perceptions of safety at night, because we have to look at those two things. You know, we know that London is a safe city, actually, through the data, we know that London is a safe city, but women's perceptions tell us something different. And so we need to close that gap. And that is what the Women's Night Safety Charter is helping to do, amongst loads of other things that the mayor is doing around women's safety. Actually tonight I'm just off to Bristol because the nighttime economy advisor in Bristol and the mayor of Bristol have just adopted the London model of the Women's Night Safety Charter. And we're seeing it being adopted in other cities, not just in the UK, but around the world. And this is really good because it will have some consistency across the country. What it does is gives, like I said, an easy and actionable plan around communication, around reporting and believing, and also around designing spaces for women to feel safer. And we've got over 800 organizations that are signed up at the moment. We've just done a big push with the fitness sector, because we realized that a lot of women going back to the gym after 2 years of exercising in their front rooms, actually, there was a heck of a lot more in what it's called is gym intimidation, of women feeling like, this doesn't feel nice. It didn't feel nice before. And now I've had 2 years of a break of this and going back, and it's not good. So we're really proud that we've got a couple of the big 24-hour gym groups, Pure Gyms and the gym group, that have signed up, with more to come. So, you know, it's trying to change culture takes a long time. You need to take people along with you and actually make it relevant and exciting for people to want to change culture.
From a King's perspective, over 40% of our students at King's are international students, and they often come to London for the first time to study at that, you know, age of like 18, 19, and are experiencing the city for the first time, making it their home for a few years, experiencing very much the nighttime economy in a lot of ways. And what would you like them to experience as London in their kind of first impression of the new big city? What would you hope that their impression of London would be?
Well, firstly, I have to say I'm so pleased that international students are coming back to London after the difficult 2 years we've had. You know, London is so rich because of the people from all over the world that choose to study, live, and work here. And I love that feeling in London when the students come back, you know, like in September, you know, and the kind of buzz. And, you know, I used to live in an area quite close to university, and, you know, you kind of see all the new international students like going around and buying their bits for their, you know, for their house shares or for their, you know, accommodation, and just like that excitement. I was an international student myself, so I know that feeling of kind of like, the world is my oyster. But I'm a little bit frightened too, because it's a new city and I don't know anyone, and it can be daunting. But I really want international students, in fact, all students, to know that London is a safe city. London is a welcoming city. And I want them to feel like they can take London as their own. I mean, they're Londoners now, really, you know, so you have to see the city as your own. And, you know, go to those places that are just slightly off the beaten track as well. Get to know the real London. Of course, the center of London has everything you'd ever want, but, you know, just maybe try and go a bit further afield as well. Go into neighborhoods and, you know, visit markets in different corners of London. Go and visit pubs or see bands. I mean, you know, you've got everything on your doorstep here in London. And so I urge you to just take advantage of it and soak it all up.
Yeah, I could talk to you all day, but I have two final questions. The first one is, What do you think London's going to look like in like 10 years time?
Wow.
or maybe what do you hope it will look like?
Well, yeah, I mean, what I hope it will be is a city with clean air. And, I know the mayor's working really hard to make that happen. I think that's hugely important for everyone, particularly for young people. It's really clear for young people, the environment and ensuring that we've got a green recovery is their number one priority. And so we really need to respond to that. We need to make sure that our city is as green as possible. And I'd also like to see our city truly 24 hours, truly 24 hours. And for us to recognize that there is huge opportunities at night. It's always been the time when entrepreneurs have seen the value in the sort of what has not been seen, what has not been seized, what has not been explored. So I'd urge everyone who's listening to really think about whatever they're doing and put it in the dark. And then what do you see? In effect, what London is like in 10 years is going to be determined by your students, Rachel. So, I just encourage them to be bold, be innovative, try things, and love to talk to them, to find out what is important to them and how can we work together to make it happen.
That was you've segued beautifully into my last question, which was, we've got a huge number of very entrepreneurially minded students that care about the problems in their society and in their city. What would your advice be to those students who are starting out on their career journeys, figuring out what they want to do, and what opportunities London might have for them beyond their studies?
Well, one thing is, I think it's quite a practical one. I think we need to look beyond apps. That's just like, I don't know, I feel like I'm inundated with people who say, oh, I've designed a new app. Now, I'm not saying the apps are bad. I'm really not. I'm really, really not. There are amazing apps out there. But I think that there are a lot of really similar apps. And I think there's something out there that's like really big and bold that's just not been harnessed yet. And it will take somebody with that entrepreneurial mindset, like some of your students, to really kind of break through that. So I think that I'd say, well, I've said it already. It's like, take risks and you will make mistakes, but that is how you learn. That is innovation. That is, that's the iterative process. And that's what we all need to be looking towards, really, is continually trying to improve and make things better. And also making sure that we are taking a fully integrated approach to everything we do. There's been criticisms of algorithms, for example, with technology, and saying, well, who's building the algorithms? If it's, the algorithms are built by one particular type of person, how is it relevant to others? And I think we really need to break out of our own individual identities and embrace other identities, and how our innovations and how our entrepreneurial spirit can serve everyone, really, in this great diverse city of ours. There's so much to play for.
What a great note to wrap up on. I think lots of students listening will be very inspired to figure out a way that they can contribute to their city in a way that will be meaningful to them. So I just want to say a massive thank you for your time today. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I think we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. It's been so great to talk to you, and look forward to seeing some of your students' ideas and seeing what the next 10 years holds for London. Thanks to them.
No worries. And thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time on Disruptors.